Let's start with the hardest truth most people spend their whole lives avoiding. You're easiest to manipulate when you still crave being liked. The day you kill that craving, the game ends. You stop talking to be heard. You stop moving to be noticed. You stop bending to be accepted. Your pace slows. Your voice lowers. Your presence sharpens. You become the one variable they can't predict, and that's when the power flips. Most of the world runs on emotional puppetry. We're trained young. Smile even when it stings. Agree before you think. Say yes because no might disappoint someone. They reward you for this. They call it being mature, easygoing, a team player. It's not maturity, it's obedience dressed as virtue. And once you stop performing that script, people feel something new around you unease. Call it fear if you want. Because Machiavelli didn't write a manual on how to be liked. He wrote the blueprint for how to be respected. Law 1 of that blueprint. Become immune to other people's disappointment. Let them frown. Let them misunderstand. Let them withdraw. If their opinion can shape you, they will shape you. They'll nudge, guilt, and go silent to move your emotions like sliders on a mixing board. But when you don't flinch, when their approval carries no currency, you turn from movable to immovable. You're no longer chasing comfort. You're cultivating gravity. People orbit those who don't orbit anyone. Predictability is the food that keeps manipulators alive. The people pleaser is predictable. They will soothe. They will explain. They will rush to make it right even when they're not wrong. Your shift is simple. Indifference toward approval makes you unreadable. If you don't need applause, you don't have to perform. If you don't need inclusion, you stop negotiating with your standards. The moment they realize your thermostat is internal, you set the temperature of every room you enter. Your strength won't come from dramatic defiance. It comes from detachment. Detachment is the ability to say no without apology, to walk away without broadcasting a speech, to do what's necessary even when it's unpopular. Most people live on a leash woven from smiles and apologies. You cut the leash and keep walking. Then they'll try to label you cold, selfish, difficult. Those are the names given to anyone who can't be moved by shame. There's a difference between cruelty and clarity. You don't harm. You refuse to be handled. You don't attack. You withdraw. You don't react. You remain still. And that stillness unnerves them. The old strings guilt, flattery, exclusion no longer pull you. Words that used to bend your spine now echo and fall. In that echo, they finally hear the truth. You were never theirs to control. You were cooperating. You were performing. Now the performance is over. You stepped off their stage, set down the mask, and let silence do the talking. You owe no one comfort. You owe yourself freedom. Freedom from the theater of approval. Freedom from explaining decisions that don't require a vote. Freedom from trying to be liked by people who wouldn't bleed for you. Kill the need to please, and something cleaner shows up. Alignment. Self-respect. Precision. With that shift comes a second one: you become unreadable. They can't decode your wants because your wants no longer center them. They examine your tone, your timing, your pauses. You stop broadcasting your inner world for free. You lock the gates. And when they can't predict you, they start to fear you not because you're cruel, but because in their world control equals safety, and you've proven you live outside their control. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. Those who control perception control power, and nothing controls perception like silence. When you stop justifying, they start guessing. When you stop performing, they start projecting. And their projections, fear, respect, obsession become your leverage. You didn't change your essence. You changed the role they're allowed to assign you. Here's the sabotage loop most people never see. The need to please turns your self-worth into a mirror anyone can crack. A raised eyebrow dents your confidence. A passive-aggressive comment derails your focus. Every time you chased reassurance, you taught others to hold your worth hostage. Break that loop. The power isn't reclaimed by arguing. It's reclaimed by not caring. Master emotional distance. Give enough to be respected, never enough to be depended on. Make your time earned, your presence limited, your praise rare, so it becomes sacred. People will start treating you like a myth, part legend, part mirror. They see in you what they crave but can't control. You're no longer a character in their story. You're the author of your own, and your script is ruthless with what it cuts. Distractions, manipulation, and anything that trades your peace for someone else's comfort. You don't shout your power. You whisper it with absence. Your withdrawal becomes consequence. Your presence becomes privilege. That's the reframe. Your yes carries weight because it isn't cheap. Your words land because you don't waste them on validation. You've trained the room to listen not out of politeness, but because scarcity amplifies signal. And now, you choose what your energy funds. Guilt? That's a leash. Shame? That's a tool used by those who ran out of persuasion. Neither works anymore. You've faced yourself, forgiven yourself, and sealed your armor from the inside. Now you move like a prince warm by choice, cold when necessary, feared by design. Your emotions aren't weapons turned against you. They're instruments you play with precision. Warmth for the worthy. Compassion without being a currency. Kindness as a strategy you control. And withdraw. At will. They'll test you. They always do. The world hates when its puppets cut their strings. They'll use silence as punishment, exclusion as a weapon, and guilt as a last resort. You've changed, they'll say. And you'll nod, because it's true. But what they'll never understand is that you didn't change to hurt them. You changed to stop hurting yourself. So you don't flinch, don't justify, don't explain. You let their confusion grow until it becomes the mirror they refuse to face. Every time they try to pull you back into the game, your calm refusal teaches them a new truth. You're not someone who can be played anymore. You'll become the villain in their story. Wear it proudly. In their language, villain means person I can no longer control. They'll say you're distant, heartless, arrogant. But those words are confessions, not insults. You are their reminder that manipulation fails when met with stillness. You are the mirror that reflects their powerlessness, and rather than admit it, they'll paint you as the problem. Let them. Their noise only amplifies your silence. Because here's what happens next. When you stop chasing to be liked, the right people begin to appear. The ones who respect boundaries, who admire strength, who don't need your softness to feel safe. They don't play you. They align with you. Without lifting a finger, you start filtering your world. The desperate fade. The worthy remain. Detachment becomes your most powerful form of discernment. Machiavelli wrote that men quickly forget benefits, but never forget injuries. The need to please gets you temporary affection and permanent disrespect. But detachment? That breeds permanent mystery and lasting power. Because mystery is magnetic. They'll never get all of you, only fragments, moments, glimpses. You remain close enough to admire, too distant to touch. That distance, when cultivated properly, becomes your throne. Your silence turns into your crown. Your indifference becomes your armor, and your absence, that becomes your legend. You never chased power. You became it. You never begged for respect. You commanded it by refusing to need it. The whispers will start about you, around you, about how you've changed. They'll analyze your tone, your posture, your gaze, because they don't understand detachment. They mistake it for arrogance. But what they're really feeling is the absence of control, and in their discomfort, they reveal your evolution. See, the most dangerous player in any room is not the loudest. It's the one who no longer needs to play. You stop trading your soul for smiles. You stop shrinking to fit their comfort. And that's why they fear you. Not because you have power, but because you've become immune to theirs. Their guilt trips, their praise turned punishment. It all slides off you like rain on armor. You've become untouchable. Not because you built walls, but because you've cleaned the inner battlefield. The parts of you that used to beg, explain, or chase are gone. Dead weight shed. What rose in their place is something people are not trained to handle, someone who can walk away without a second thought. That's what true gravity feels like. The more you don't need them, the more they orbit you. You become felt, not held. Seen, but never fully understood. Admired, feared, desired, all in silence. Because when they can't control you, obsession begins. Not because you gave too much, but because you now give less than they expect. And less, when it's deliberate, becomes infinitely more. They begin to dream about your voice, analyze your pauses, replay your last goodbye. You speak less, they hear more. You act less, they react more. You've made yourself scarce in a world drowning in overexposure, and that scarcity becomes sacred. They study your absence like scripture, searching for meaning in your silence. They replay your calm exits, your cool reappearances, your unbothered eyes. You've become a puzzle they can't solve. And that drives them mad, because now their identity depends on your validation, while your validation depends on nothing. You've reversed the economy of emotion. What do you call someone who doesn't chase, doesn't explain, doesn't break? You call them unforgettable. You call them dangerous. You call them what you can't play. Once you reach that level, the air around you changes. People lower their voices when you enter. They double-check their words, not because you demand respect, but because you train them through silence, through absence, through unpredictability. They don't see you anymore. They see their reflection in your restraint. That's how you dominate without domination, not through aggression, but through gravity. Stillness becomes your weapon. Detachment becomes your crown. You don't need a title, a throne, or a speech. You carry your authority in how you don't respond. You carry it in the pauses, the unshaken eyes, the quiet exit. Stillness breaks them because stillness exposes what's weak. You don't need to prove anything. The moment you stop reacting, the hierarchy reveals itself, and you're already on top. Then comes the silence after the storm. They try to provoke you back into the game. Exaggerated kindness, sudden apologies, let's talk. But you've outgrown their frequency. They don't understand that when you cut access, it's not temporary. You don't block out of anger, you vanish out of clarity. They think they're waiting for your return, but you've already moved on. You're not in the same world anymore. They're still addicted to attention, and you've evolved into presence. You must understand this. When you walk away in silence, you don't lose power, you multiply it. Every absence builds your legend. Every unanswered message becomes a monument to your restraint. They open old conversations, scroll through your name, trying to feel that same gravity again. But it's gone. And nothing haunts a manipulator more than the realization that they've lost access. Not because you slammed the door, but because you simply stopped returning to it. People become addicted to their ability to reach you. They mistake accessibility for importance. But when you withdraw that access, they start to question their own value. They begin to see how much of their identity depended on your responses, your attention, your warmth. They remember how your silence felt heavier than anyone else's words. That's the price of losing someone who no longer plays the game. You didn't just walk away. You transcended the stage entirely. You stopped performing, stopped auditioning, stopped explaining, and in that void, they begin to rewrite their memories, trying to make sense of the shift. You've changed, they'll say. But the truth is, you didn't change. You revealed. You peeled off the polite mask and showed the part of yourself that doesn't need applause to breathe. You became the storm after the silence, the gravity after the chaos. And now, you don't seek to be understood, because understanding makes you small. The moment you try to explain yourself, you give them tools to dissect you. But mystery is immortal. They respect what they can't define. They chase what they can't capture. And so, you stop explaining and start embodying. You move differently. You speak less. You choose your battles like a surgeon, precise, deliberate, final. Let them think you're cold. Let them call you distant. Those words only prove they were never looking at you. They were looking at the reflection they wanted you to be. When you refuse to play that reflection, their discomfort surfaces. They'll call your detachment arrogance, but it's actually cleanliness, the purity of no longer participating in emotional pollution. You're clean from the mess of constant compromise, from the rot of needing to be understood. And that's what makes you magnetic. They start comparing everyone to you. Every new connection feels dull, predictable, rehearsed. Because once they've experienced someone who moves with restraint, every oversharer feels desperate. Every attention seeker feels loud. You've set a new standard without saying a word. They now measure others by how closely they resemble your silence. They will come back, always, not because they've changed, but because you showed them something they can't forget. Control without control, power without noise. They'll test the waters, act curious, pretend to have evolved. But you'll see it in their eyes. The same hunger for validation, the same need for attention. You'll know instantly that nothing's changed, and you won't correct them. You won't teach them. You'll just let them drown in your calm. That's the final lesson Machiavelli understood. Domination isn't about force. It's about perception. Those who can't predict you, fear you. And those who can't move you, worship you. Your silence becomes scripture. Your absence becomes their obsession. You don't beg to be included because you've become the invitation. You've inverted the power dynamic completely. You used to audition for people's attention. Now they audition for your access. They analyze your replies, your timing, even your indifference. They wonder what earns your interest, what words, what behavior, what loyalty. And that's the new economy you've built. Exclusivity as power. Because when everyone else is cheap, your restraint becomes luxury. And soon, they'll realize they don't miss you. They miss the version of themselves they felt around you. Your presence once forced them to elevate. Your absence exposes how far they've fallen back into mediocrity. They'll tell stories about you, but not because they want to smear you, because they're trying to understand you. They'll replay the moments, the silences, the times you didn't react. And every replay reinforces your position as something beyond reach. That's how legends form, not from noise, but from precision. You don't scream your worth. You demonstrate it in what you no longer tolerate. You don't argue your standards. You enforce them in silence. You don't chase love. You filter it. Because the truth is, people play those desperate to belong. But you're no longer desperate. You are the belonging, the gravity, the standard. The people who remain will feel the difference instantly. They won't try to impress you with noise. They'll mirror your composure. They'll speak slower, act cleaner, move with more intention. Not because you told them to, but because your energy demands it. They'll realize that your approval isn't a reward. It's a reflection of alignment. They'll work to rise to it, or they'll fade quietly. And you'll stop explaining your piece. You'll stop defending your evolution. You'll understand that not everyone deserves to see how you built your power. You'll let them guess, let them wonder, because curiosity is a leash you control. Your transformation becomes their punishment. Their regret becomes your silence's echo. You'll notice people still trying to read you, scanning your expression for softness, your pauses for weakness. But they'll find nothing, because what used to be emotion is now discipline. You no longer bleed for validation. You breathe in strategy. You've turned approval into alignment. You've turned reaction into observation. You've turned your stillness into sovereignty. You've stopped needing redemption because you never sinned by refusing to please. You've outgrown guilt. You've outgrown explanation. You've outgrown the version of yourself who thought being liked was power. You're not cold. You're refined. You're not distant. You're selective. You're not cruel. You're precise. And that precision, that silence, that restraint, it's what makes you unforgettable. Ring you in fragments, wondering why your calm hurt more than their chaos. They'll retell stories about you to anyone who'll listen, but every retelling makes your myth grow stronger, not weaker. You become the name that lingers in their mind long after you've gone. That's how control works, not through argument or dominance, but through irreplaceability. You become the standard they can't find again, the energy they only experience once and then search for forever. You don't compete. You redefine the entire field. You become the watermark that makes everything else look counterfeit. Your detachment isn't cruel, it's surgical. It's the art of removing rot before it infects what's sacred. You don't cut to hurt, you cut to protect what's pure. That's what they'll never grasp. Love without boundaries is not love, it's servitude. Real love sees everything, and sometimes it walks away anyway. And here's the paradox that Machiavelli would have admired. The moment you no longer seek to please anyone, you begin to attract the ones truly worthy of you. Because they can feel it, your stillness, your self-respect, your selective warmth. It's rare, it's addictive. They'll adjust their tone, their timing, their energy, just to fit inside your orbit. They'll sense the gravity you carry and instinctively rise to meet it. Most won't, though. Most will retreat, insulted by your silence, threatened by your restraint. Let them. Their exit is your proof of clarity. The ones who remain, they'll treat your presence like treasure because they know how quickly it can vanish. You've inverted the game. You no longer chase attention. Attention chases you. You no longer perform for applause. Silence follows you like shadow follows light. And here's where you evolve from dangerous to divine. You stop being affected by the world's noise entirely. You move like someone who's already chosen their path. And every decision, every no, every pause carries the weight of inner peace. You don't need to raise your voice, because your stillness already speaks authority. You don't need to defend your choices, because your results are the defense. People used to drain you with questions. Why did you stop talking? Why don't you react? Why are you so quiet? But they don't ask anymore. They've learned. You've trained the room. You've conditioned the space around you with your silence. Now, when you enter, people pay attention not out of politeness, but out of curiosity, reverence, even fear. You've become a presence that reshapes behavior. Understand this truth. You can't command power if you need to be liked. The two cannot coexist. Those who crave approval serve it. Those who master detachment rule it. That's why Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Fear, in this sense, isn't terror. It's respect drawn from clarity. It's the kind of quiet dominance that says, "I don't need you to like me to remain unshaken." You've entered that space now, the space where your words are few but final. The space where your absence weighs more than most people's presence. The space where your peace is so stable that chaos avoids you. You've become the embodiment of psychological gravity. You don't chase energy, you filter it. You don't crave connection, you choose it. And because of that, you become unforgettable. They'll still try, of course. Some will mimic your composure, confuse mimicry for mastery. They'll mirror your stillness, imitate your tone, copy your restraint. But imitation is visible to those who've earned their calm. You'll see through them instantly, because silence born from fear feels empty, while silence born from power feels full. Yours is full of intention, control, and peace. You are not numb, you are exact. You are not emotionless, you are emotionally disciplined. You feel everything, but nothing owns you. That's the final transformation. You don't resist the game. You've outgrown it. You've replaced obedience with awareness. You've replaced approval with alignment. You've replaced addiction with mastery. And those who meet you now, in this state of precision, will sense it immediately. They'll speak slower. They'll hesitate before lying. They'll stand taller. Not because you intimidate them, but because your energy demands truth. You've become a mirror that reflects integrity back at whoever looks into it. That's real dominance, not noise, not aggression, but presence so unwavering that everything false naturally collapses around it. Stillness has made you sovereign. Detachment has made you magnetic. And silence, the kind that once felt like loneliness, has become your crown. At this point, something shifts. You're no longer chasing peace. You've become it. You walk into a room and the atmosphere bends subtly around you. People lower their voices, measure their words, and move differently. Not because you demanded it, but because your energy has taught them how. You're not performing control anymore. You are control. You've stopped reacting to noise. You've stopped rewarding chaos. The people who used to drain you now find no entry point. Their tricks, guilt, silence, praise, flattery all fall flat. You've built an internal fortress that no emotional manipulation can breach. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. Because you've learned the rarest Machiavellian truth of all. Real power isn't about ruling others, it's about ruling yourself. And that rule begins with silence. Not passive silence, but intentional silence. The kind that disarms, that makes people question their assumptions, that forces reflection. You no longer explain your peace to those who thrive on conflict. You no longer justify your distance to those who confuse access with value. You no longer apologize for being selective with your energy, because you finally understand your time, your attention, your presence are currencies. And in a world where everyone overspends, you've chosen to save yours. That's why they whisper about you now, why your name travels in rooms you've never entered, because mystery is louder than noise. They call you unreadable, unreachable, cold. But that's the price of being rare. You no longer exist in the economy of attention. You've become a luxury few can afford, and that's what terrifies them most. They can't figure out what you want, because what you want no longer includes them. They can't manipulate what they can't measure. You've transcended their emotional language. You operate on a higher frequency, calm, deliberate, sovereign. They crave your reaction, but your stillness gives them nothing. You've stopped being their mirror. You've become their contrast. They'll feel it. The weight of your silence, the precision of your absence. It lingers like a sentence they can't finish. They'll replay old words, reanalyze old moments, wondering when they lost you. But the truth is, they never had you. They had a version of you built to survive, not to reign. That version is gone now. Buried quietly. No eulogy, no announcement. Just gone. The new you doesn't chase understanding, you command recognition. You don't fight for a seat at the table. You build your own and watch who shows up. You no longer lower your standards for inclusion. You raise the entire environment through presence alone. That's sovereignty, not noise, not rebellion composure. The calm precision of someone who knows they can walk away from anything that costs their peace. That's what Machiavelli meant when he said the strongest rulers are those who need nothing. When you kill the need to please, you kill dependency. You stop giving your power to every opinion, every mood, every whisper. You stop performing softness to earn safety. Because now you understand safety doesn't come from approval. It comes from clarity. You move differently now. You love differently. You even lose differently. Loss no longer breaks you. It refines you. Pain no longer defines you. It instructs you. You don't argue with disrespect. You don't negotiate with betrayal. You simply remove access quietly, completely, and permanently. That's not cruelty. That's standard. And your standard is now your shield. So when they say, "You've changed," smile. They're right. You've become everything they can't manipulate: calm, controlled, self-contained. They'll mistake it for arrogance because humility without obedience confuses them. But you don't need to correct their misunderstanding. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them build their stories around the silence you left behind. Because your silence is now your reputation. And one day, they'll realize the truth. You were never trying to win their approval. You were training them to respect your absence. You were never cold. You were clean. You were never distant. You were disciplined. You didn't build walls. You built standards. And those who can't meet them will label your boundaries as cruelty simply because they've never met someone who refuses to bend. So don't bend. Don't chase. Don't explain. Just continue walking through the world like a storm contained in human form, quiet, deliberate, and final. Because they can't play you anymore. Not because you learned their tricks, but because you no longer need to play. You are no longer seeking to be liked. You are building to be legendary. You are not the player. You are the board. And when you stop needing approval, you stop moving for anyone. They move for you.